Yeah, they say anything's possible. You got a dream like you never seen obstacles. Chasing obscene profits, so we ain't stopping for the red lights. Look at my review, all I see is headlights. Catch me if you can. Whoa, they try and sack me and I scramble. Look up in the sky.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Beats and Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Antuna, and today we're going to be discussing the NBA All-Decade teams. Yes, the best players of this past decade put in the first, second, and third teams. This past decade, we've seen achievements, we've seen accolade, we've seen super teams, we've also seen super losses. And the first player that comes to mind when you say those last two things is none less than Stephen Curry. He's been part of the greatest team assembled when it first comes to mind. He's also been on one of the greater upsets, if not the greatest upset of this past decade. Losing, went up 3-1 to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. But Stephen Curry, the three-time NBA champion, has went to 5 straight NBA Finals, a back-to-back MVP in this decade, a scoring champ, a 6-time NBA All-Star, which should be a 7-time NBA All-Star, being snubbed in the 2013 All-Star game, is the greatest shooter to ever play the game. Plain and simple. He's going to catch Reggie. He is going to catch Ray. It's inevitable. Since the beginning of the 2014-2015 season, over 105 players have shot over 1,000 threes. He's first in makes and is second in efficiency. Now, I'm not going to go deep into the analytics because we know how great Stephen Curry is, and there's no excuse why he shouldn't be on the first team of the NBA All-Decade team. Moving on, progression. I love seeing people evolve and better themselves and become something people did not expect. And then the first person that comes to mind is James Harden, a sixth man for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who many thought that was his limit, winning the Sixth Man of the Year award in the 2011-2012 NBA season. He's transformed something much larger than that. In the past 5 seasons, he's increased his scoring average more and more. Is going to average 30 plus for 3 straight years. He's on track for that, and is an MVP in this past decade. Now, many don't like his style of play, him going to the line excessively. But when we talk about Stephen Curry and how he revolutionized the game and how big men have to shoot now, and you're back against the rim, that doesn't really apply because it's not as efficient. Stephen Curry has a lot to do with that, and the Splash Brothers and Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry, because they shot so well. The 3-and-D, the pace. And James Harden originally has to do with that. He's partially responsible for how the game has evolved. And getting to the line and shooting threes at a high rate. Now, many may argue he's only had one finals appearance in this decade in 2012. But mind you, in his 5 seasons of Houston, they've went to the playoffs every year. And in 4 of those years, they've played Golden State twice in the conference finals. And we all are aware of what would happen if Chris Paul didn't injure his hamstring. I'm not going to go into deep detail with this first team because they all are well deserving. Moving on. The person that has the shortest resume on this list is Kawhi Leonard, without a doubt. A 3-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, but also a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and a 2-time NBA champion, and a 2-time NBA Finals MVP as well. The significance with his resume is far more significant than any resume in the second team, and I'll tell you why. He is the Dragon Slayer of this decade. He's the knight in shining armor. He is another key piece of how the league changed. It was super teams, and now it's super duos, and he is the main contributor to that. He defeated Miami with the Heatles in supporting cast. He defeated the greatest super team assigned, and yes, injuries were responsible for that as well. But you're telling me Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, Van Fleet, and Siakam are going to handle that? Whether Thompson is healthy, whether KD is healthy, they couldn't do that on their own. They could not whatsoever. And his resume would be much longer if he didn't play in a system the way Greg Popovich orchestrates his offense. Tim Duncan's resume would be a receipt list. Same thing with Ginobili as well as Parker. But the way Popovich's offenses ran is not to have anybody average north of 23, 24 points per game. It's just the way it is. They like their scoring in different contributors. They have depth, and that's how they succeed. Now moving on, LeBron James. I don't need to say too much. 8 straight NBA Finals appearances. The greatest player of this decade, without a doubt. Now, like we talked about earlier, the big man has gone extinct. A big man is not what a big man once was in the NBA. So Kevin Durant has to fill this position. 7 feet, listed now. The 2-time champ, a Finals MVP, a regular season MVP, has made 4 NBA Finals appearances this decade. The greatest scorer of this decade. We talk about Stephen Curry being the greatest shooter, but Kevin Durant can score at any given angle, on anybody. With his wingspan, with his handle, he's an underrated defender as well, an underrated passer. Kevin Durant is the greatest scorer of this decade and is second to LeBron of greatness in this decade. Hey, thanks for watching Beats and Basketball on YouTube. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more basketball coverage coming your way. We'll see you around next time.